Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. It is an honor for me to introduce, to be a moderator and introduce Professor Bill Atweh. Yeah. Professor Bill Atweh is a visiting professor at Philippines Normal University in Manila, and adjunct professor at Cardiff University and Queensland University of Technology, Australia. After spending more than 25 years in higher education in Australia, he moved to live in Philippines and to work as an international education consultant. Bill's main interest is educational research in the overall area of social cultural aspects of education, including the effects of gender and socio-econometric background of student on participation and achievement in education. Jadi kalau saya sebut ini bidang baru sebenarnya kalau bagi Indonesia, matematika dikaitkan dengan social konteks gitu. Di Bill Atweh adalah pakar di bidang itu. He has developed special interest in the use of action research as professional development of teacher. More recently, he has conducted research on the role of internationalization and globalization and issues of social justice in international collaboration. He is the co-author of several books in education, also referee for so many international journal, that has supervised tens of students of master program and also doctoral program. He's widely traveled around the world and has worked with several universities in South America and South Africa and many countries in Asia. For this moment, Professor Bill Atweh will present the paper about socially responsible mathematics, science and technology education, quality, engagement and sustainability. For the next 40 minutes, we will hear the presentation of Professor Bill Atweh. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always a great pleasure to come to this country, and I'm constantly amazed at the level of hospitality and goodwill that you show towards me. And I feel I have to apologize for the Australian government that we had and their effort to destroy the relationship between your people and my fellow countrymen. And in spite of what governments do with each other, the goodwill, the collaboration between us continue. So thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for the organizers for the invitation. Thank you. And I don't have much time today, so I need to get into the talk. I want to share with you some ideas that look at the type of research that we do, and before that, I want to revisit the aims and the purposes of teaching mathematics, science and technology. And in a minute, I'll talk about why do I need to do that. A lot of times we assume the roles of mathematics and science for the personal development, for the economic development of the country, but we need to readdress that, because that determines, I will argue, the type of school content that we do and hopefully type of research that we do as well. Then I want to talk very, very briefly about ethics as a theoretical model for teaching and learning. We don't talk very much about that either. Then I want to talk a little bit about type of research that we have done and argue that that type of research will be useful and will be ethical to do in education. A very big agenda, very difficult to cover in 30 minutes, but we will try. We will try. Okay, why do we need to raise the question of the purpose? I thought we settled that many years ago. Why do we need to examine that? Biesta is a philosopher of education that I like very much because I can understand him, and he's very contemporary, and he talks about real issues in a language that is accessible. And he noted that curriculum documents around the world do not raise the question of the purpose and the aims of mathematics and science and technology education and other subjects. They sort of assume that. And he said it's quite a pity that we don't keep asking that question. And he noted also another pattern in education, that we don't use the word education as much these days. We use learning outcomes and measuring learning and all of that kind of thing, learning objectives. And he says there's a difference between education and learning. And we seem to have forgotten about what does it mean to be educated, and we concentrate on learning and measuring learning. Now, if I ask you, or a group of teachers, what kind of aims of education that you like your students to achieve from math, science, or technology education, as well as a subject, you might come with a list like this: personal growth and wealth and jobs and economy and natural, competition with the world and so on and so forth. Now, notice that I put them into two categories. The up category relate more to the individual gains. And they're very important, they're very good. I want my students to get good jobs, I want them to make money, I want them to participate in society, and so on. But also, society demands a social return for education, international competitiveness, participation, developing the wealth of the country, and so on. And that's good as well. But often there's a tension between them and different priorities we put on them. I want to make the observation, and feel free to disagree with it, that in many systems around the world, there is much more focus these days on the personal gain of education and their personal criteria, individual testing. I don't know what the origin of that focus on the individual in contrast to the social, but that's a different story. But it seems to me there is more focus on the individual. Well, what does Indonesia say? I'm a student of Indonesian culture and values and education system. But one of my students, the last PhD student I had from here, talked about the Pancasila. Excuse the spelling or the pronunciation. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it very well. Now these are, for the visitors, these are set of values that determine everything about the social life, political life of the Philippines. And if I understand it right, they are principles behind the Constitution. They are more powerful than the Constitution. Is that correct? Now, I don't know very much about the history of them, but when I read them, I said, wow, great. That's the only country in the world that I know that is guided by a set of principles that are out there, acknowledged and recognized, and we judge systems of education, policies, even the Constitution, based on those principles. That's a mighty effort. But the second thing that I was very much interested in that, if you read those, all of them relate to the social structures and responsibilities. Very little about the individual. I thought that was very interesting. And it fits in very well with what I my values and my beliefs and my research and activities, both in terms of training teachers and in terms of the type of research that I do. So, to me, and many other mathematics educators, the primary role of education is not training for jobs, not training for the economy, although these are very important. To me, the ultimate aim and success, measuring success of education, is developing responsible citizenship. It does include jobs, making money, solving social problems as well. But it is more than that. It is developing a socially responsible citizen. I used to say active citizen, now I use responsible citizen because looking at many active citizens in the Australian society and international society, there are a lot of people who are very active, but not very good for society. So I made that distinction between active citizen and responsible citizen. Now that brings me to the point of what do we mean by responsible? What is responsible? Now, responsible is an ethical term. It's one of the concepts that all ethics and philosophy talk about, responsibility. And a lot of people put responsibility as the main characteristic or building block of the ethics that they develop. But in any ethical system, you encounter the word responsibility. It is an obligation that we cannot escape. It is an obligation. And according to some ethicists like Levinas, it is a primary obligation that